We're talking about fresh black truffles straight from Italy, how to clean them, what to make with them, and how to store and preserve them. Also, how to get them into the country. This is Cooking Companion TV, and I'm Jenna. Welcome and a special hello and thank you to my channel member, Christopher. Hi, Christopher. Now get yourself a good glass of something to sip on and let's get right to it. My husband and I have started traveling abroad over Thanksgiving. It's an easy 5 to 6 day DINK getaway to eat and drink our way through some delicious city. Now this year it was Cannes and Rome, Cannes for family business and then Rome for vacation. I saw in the Cannes market truffles and I thought, why not? I did a quick Google search and confirmed that you can bring truffles into the US. The USDA classifies them as tubers, even though they are technically mushrooms. But they are therefore acceptable to bring in. But most of them get confiscated by customs if they're found because of the soil on them. That is the risk. Now, I decided to take that risk, knowing nothing about truffle care. Despite it being an education, it was a lot of fun, and here's what I learned about buying fresh truffles in Europe and bringing them back to the US. So the first question when buying truffles abroad is if you can even bring them home. Technically, yes, with some risk, and by the way, this is all for just the US. The soil that coats them is the real issue, and even if you clean them yourself, they could still be confiscated if customs finds them because they may not be convinced that all the soil is gone. Now, soil can contain some contaminants that can wreak havoc on a local ecosystem, and that's what makes the soil so heavily regulated. For commercial imports, there's probably some workarounds. I don't know. The catch-22 is that the soil keeps them fresher longer. Mine didn't smell like much of anything at first, but then I removed the soil and they got more fragrant for 2 days, and then they started to fade. So if you want to take that risk, here's the timeline of my experience. I bought them when we had about 7 more days remaining on vacation. The vendor said we could wrap them in paper towels, then keep them in the paper bag they gave us and change out the paper towels every day. And when I did, I could feel a slight dampness to the paper towels because they release a little bit of moisture every day. Now, if the soil is left on them, you have maybe upwards of 2 weeks to keep them before you have to use them. Once you remove the soil, you've got like 3 days to use them up, in my experience. I cleaned them with about 3 days left on the trip, and they were nearly ruined by the time I got home. Nearly. I still had some fun. First thing I experimented with was how to make a fresh truffle pasta with butter and cheese. I just wanted those fragrant sheets of truffle twirled around pasta noodles. So our foundation here is 4 tablespoons of European-style butter because it has a higher fat content than standard butter. We melt this over low heat, and then about 1/3 of your fresh truffle is grated into the butter and stirred. This helps the truffle flavor integrate throughout the sauce. Then we add in cooked noodles straight from the cooking water. We want that starchy water to thicken into the sauce. Now, as much as I adore fresh pasta, dried pasta will produce starchier water, which is better for pan sauces like this. Now toss it together vigorously to emulsify the pasta water and the butter, and start sprinkling in grated Parmigiano Reggiano or Pecorino cheese. Then you season with a little salt and pepper. Keep tasting it and adding cheese until you're satisfied with the flavor. For me, it was the cheese I wanted to add in. And by the way, this is all over low heat so we don't cook out the truffle essence. Heat will degrade that iconic truffle flavor. So once you're satisfied, plate the pasta and shave the rest of your truffle. Also, you do not need a truffle shaver for truffles. This was a delightful find. You can just use a vegetable peeler. This was really exciting to figure out. Now you may be wondering how to clean fresh truffles to be ready for cooking. So I got excited and decided to clean them when I had 3 days before we got home. Dear viewer, this was a rushed mistake. So first, everything on the internet will tell you to use a brush and maybe a damp towel. Definitely no soaking in water or running under the faucet. Now, my vendor suggested hydrogen peroxide or mineral water, no tap water because of the calcium in it. But he didn't say when to clean them, so I just got excited one night and just went at it with a toothbrush and a lot of hydrogen peroxide. The soil was hard and it caked on, so the damp towel just didn't feel like it would actually work, or it would have taken hours. Although I should have been more patient with that. Also, toothbrush brittles felt too soft, and I think a vegetable brush with shorter, denser bristles may work more efficiently. The point is, we want to use as little moisture as possible when cleaning the soil off of a fresh truffle. And you just gently start working off the soil. Like that's kind of it. Now, when do you clean a fresh truffle? Ideally, right before you cook with it, like same day, like maybe the night before. Using hydrogen peroxide makes sense because the bubbles help to unsettle the dirt, especially in those crevices, but I can't find any source on the internet that also recommends this. And it was still moisture that found its way into the truffle and started to degrade it. Here's a close-up of my truffles when I finally got home and could eat them. See that squishy stuff? That's where the moisture got to it. And then the outside of my truffle was also very stale and crunchy. It was not a great texture for cooking, so I meticulously cut it off before my final preservation efforts. So when you want to extend the life of your precious fresh truffle, you can make truffle salt, truffle oil, or truffle butter. I decided on butter because the oil would be a finishing oil, which you can't cook with, but I could slather hot toast with truffle butter and be very happy. Plus the butter can sit in the freezer for up to 6 months. So here's what I did. 1 pound of European style butter and 1 ounce of fresh truffle plus a teaspoon of salt. The truffles are grated or diced up if you can. Because mine were pretty dried up, I had to cut off the outside edges. If they're pretty fresh, it's probably fine to leave that on. And this ends up being really cool because when you do use your butter and it melts, then it releases all of that truffle essence, and then you have all these beautiful specks of black truffle. Mix it together and form it into a mold or a shape, and then let it sit in the fridge for 2 to 3 days, or it could go straight in the freezer too. But the idea is you want to let it sit for 2 or 3 days before you eat it so that the flavor can settle in. Then wrap it up well and store it in the freezer. I made 1 large block, and because of the fat content, it's actually very easy to break up, like to cut off smaller pieces to thaw just a few tablespoons at a time. And this has been so much fun, y'all. I can do toast and eggs and pasta with the butter. I decided against making truffle salt because there is some question about the shelf life, and I just decided I didn't want to research it that much when I knew I would use a lot of butter. And I just couldn't see myself using truffle salt that often to use it up within just a few weeks. Now, as an example, I did make bain-marie scrambled eggs, which is a very creamy scrambled texture that usually incorporates a lot of cream or butter while being cooked. But I stirred in truffle butter at the end as a way of getting both the texture from the fat content and the flavor from the truffle. Now, I've got a dedicated video on this because this video is getting a bit long. But speaking of eggs, they say that you can store truffles with your eggs and that the porousness of the eggshell will absorb the truffle flavor. So I tried that, but I did not get any noticeable transfer. And I have a couple of suspicions about that. 1, my truffles peaked in flavor or scent a few days before, and there just wasn't much essence left by the time I got home. And 2, they may not have been the most fragrant variety. And what does that mean? Broadly speaking, we have summer, autumn, and winter truffles. And they range in potency, with winter truffles having the most flavor and summer being the mildest. So winter truffle season starts as early as late October, and I bought mine in late November. So I'm assuming they were winter truffles. Then within winter truffles, we have black and white truffles. And now the white variations are the most potent and prized and priced. We can get into more variations within each region and even country because you have both French and Italian truffles and probably others. But in general, Umbria, Italy has the best truffles, with even a truffle festival in January in Alta. So put that on your bucket list. By the way, if you were ever in Turin, which is a beautiful city, there is a delightful restaurant that always has truffles on the menu, and it's called Tabui. By the way, if you're new here, I'm Jenna, and this is Cooking Companion TV. I have a vast library of vegetable-centric recipes, and I'm branching into premium food experiences. Give me a subscribe if this sounds interesting, and leave on those notifications. I also talk about some child-free stuff because that's my life, and I do want to share more about that lifestyle. I won't do a lot of public stuff about that. We'll probably start sharing more of that in my channel membership, which also has some exclusive cooking content if you're curious about that. Okay, let me know if you have specific questions about truffles. I'll do my best to help. To recap, this was not intended to be an exhaustive video on all things you need to know about fresh truffles, but it was intended to get you excited about them. If you've decided to clean them before you travel, be ready to use them as soon as you get home. Keep them wrapped in tissue or paper towel or napkin. And now, I started changing mine out twice a day after I washed them because of how much moisture I introduced to them and then how much moisture they were losing each day. And if that moisture stays like within or around the truffle, you're creating a situation for mildew. I did get a little bit of that, which all you have to do is just brush it off as soon as you notice it. So I was checking it like twice a day. But my recommendation is to clean them only a day or so before you travel. Let them completely dry before you wrap them up in the paper towel. And then change out the paper towels twice a day and be ready to cook them or preserve them in oil or butter ASAP. Now, between the butter and the pasta and the eggs, that's a solid introduction to cooking with fresh truffles at home.